How you all doing, comrades? My name is Rev Comrade Rowley, and this is my voice. 1 year and almost a month on testosterone, and today is the 7th of May 2020. And this is FDM Support Advice and Activism. And today I want to talk to you about legally changing your name. Um, essentially, the process of legally changing your name starts with a discussion with your family and friends. Friends, essentially, the process of legally changing your name in the case of transgender folks is also very much tied to an application to also change your gender. Under normal circumstances, essentially it's normally two separate processes, but in the case of Queensland births, deaths and marriages, changing your name is also tied with legally changing your gender, and under Queensland legislation, that requires normally requires gender reassignment surgery. But under COVID-19 restrictions, Queensland births, deaths and marriages are permitting transgender folk to, at minimum, change the name. So as I said, changing your name normally starts with a discussion with family and friends. Now, in the case of transgender folks who got taken from their families as children, who also happen to be adult survivors, as in my case, the process of me changing my name had been fraught with difficulty, because when I was born in 1978, because I was born out of the act of adultery, I was classified as an illegal birth under Section 85 of the Queensland Children's Services Act of 1965. And my family wasn't given a chance to give me my name, and so Queensland docs took it upon themselves to pick a name that wasn't me. And so essentially I had been taught to essentially just go by whatever name people wanted to call me, until it reached a point where I could no longer survive being called other names people decided for me. So that was one part of the problem that I encountered. The second part of the problem is that I also had to go through the process of finding my relatives in order to learn what my name was, because it wasn't until recently that I did not know what my birth name was. And it was through the course of finding my family, that I was able to learn what my birth name was, and also had to go through the process of getting consent from my family in order to change my name, particularly around my surname. Essentially, I had to get permission from them in order to use my birth name, which is Rowley. Rowley. Because essentially, like a lot of adult survivors, I just wasn't told until I found my family. family. So essentially, so that's another reason why it took a while for me to be able to medically and legally gender transition, because of the fact that I didn't know what my name was, and used to just go by whatever people called me, until it reached a point where I could no longer survive it, and also got consent. Sent. Essentially, for those, so even in the case of adult survivor transgender, folks, if you are able to have or find your family, it really is worthwhile having a discussion with your family in order to come up with a name that both are okay with. And so once you have picked a name, etc., your next step is then going through the process of legally change it. So in Australia, you don't, generally speaking, you don't go to court for transgender recognition. The only time you go to court is if birth, deaths, and marriages deem your name to be a name or gender to be a prohibited name or gender, then you go to court. Unless they give you the option of lodging a new application. So in Asian, if the birth, deaths, and marriages have not deemed your name or gender a prohibited name, then they normally approve it. Prove it. Prove it. But if they have deemed your name to be a prohibited name, then you've got to go through the process of providing additional evidence to them in order to prove that your name is not a prohibited name under the Act. So essentially, so in my case, essentially, I was initially going to wait until I'd had gender reassignment surgery, because that's what I'd been told, that I had to wait until I'd had gender reassignment surgery to go through the legal process of changing the name and gender. But I was encouraged by the gender centre to go through to start the legal process of changing the name. So essentially, things that you can do to change your name without a birth certificate is you can change it through Medicare, you can change it through Centrelink, your university, your church, etc., without a birth certificate. Where you need a birth certificate is if you have to get a passport because you haven't had surgery to change your gender marker, and if you need a driver's license or a proof of age card. Is where you need a birth certificate. So that's the piece of advice I can get you. So, and it also depends on the organisation, etc. So some places will accept secondary ID and the two doctors' letters. Other places also require a birth certificate. So it all depends on the organisation that you go through.